The Basics of Economics by Tony Cleaver. A monopoly is a single large firm that sells its products in a marketplace with no effective rival. It's a situation governments all over the world are obligated to restrict, especially for essential goods. Otherwise, customers pay what the monopolist desires, thus giving it immense economic power. In practice, the government would not allow a monopolist to control anything beyond 25% of the market share. The result, therefore, is competition occurs between a small number of very large firms, and this market structure is known as oligopoly. Economies of scale provide one explanation for oligopolies being able to resist dilution of their market power by the entry on new businesses. Other methods include technical factors, e.g. aerospace, the oil industry, and in the pharmaceuticals where the capital threshold is simply immense. Economics is not an exact science. Things never turn out quite the way theory predicts since, unlike the hard sciences such as physics, there are so many variables beyond the economist's control. Both macroeconomic and microeconomic reforms are necessary to secure growth with stability. The level of aggregate demand must be high enough to prevent recession, and government monetary and fiscal policies can work to offset booms and slumps as Keynes advised. Friedman argued that monetary discipline combined with microeconomic reforms to liberalize markets could contain both inflation and unemployment. Such policies have been widely adopted since the 1980s, though unemployment and widening disparities have proved to be a significant social cost. Despite this, macroeconomic policies to adjust interest rates and aggregate demand and microeconomic policies to free up trade are today both accepted as important instruments of government economic management. Money makes the world go round. It's a unique commodity that is only as good as other people think it is. It is first and foremost a medium of exchange. Measuring value of money requires some baseline to which all prices can be compared. The baseline against which money itself is valued is a somber basket of everyday commodities, a long list of items which the average household in a society will buy and which is weighed according to their relative importance. Governments appoint statisticians to compile records and regularly calculate whether or not and by how much inflation has risen and the value of money fallen, e.g. 10% rise in the price of bread will imply a more important fall in value of money than a 100% rise in the price of golf balls. Money should act as a store of value. People save by putting money into pension funds so that they have some income when they retire. What distinguishes hard currencies from soft ones is that the former are a better source of value. They are less likely to suffer inflation. This facilitates a major feature of all modern money, the ability to buy now and pay later. Not all that is a good store of value is necessarily money. That is because an essential feature of money is that it is a perfectly liquid asset that is exchangeable at any time at no cost for anything you want. Money comes in many different forms, such as given weights of precious metals that have since evolved into coins and notes. The former were originally standardized units of precious metals, gold and silver. The latter were originally promises to pay a given weight of precious metal. Coins and notes now are tokens with no intrinsic value, but interestingly, they have assumed the mythical property of real money like gold, since today what changes in trade is not cash but check and credit cards. Modern Islamic banks are prohibited from lending money at interest. Instead, they receive dividends by being part owners of businesses they finance. Commercial banking for profit in the Christian world first started in the northern Italian states of Lombardy and Florence, where certain families with wealth at their disposal held court for potential entrepreneurs. The central bank of a country is the fulcrum of a country's banking system and maintains the stability of money supply by various methods, e.g., changing reserve requirements, open market operations, and by use of discount rates. Trying to maintain fixed exchange rates as time change when global markets question the value of the currency concerned has been a contributing factor in most modern financial crashes, e.g. the East Asia currency crisis in 1997, Russia in 1998, and Argentina in 2001. All crashes occur when assets become overvalued in a speculative bubble. The readjustment that is inevitable and which everyone knows is coming sooner or later typically occurs in one traumatic collapse because no one wants to hold on to their stocks if prices are falling. Once started, fear of loss terrifies everyone into panic selling. A country's income and welfare is enhanced by trade, not reduced. International trade is not a zero-sum game where if one country gets richer, another must get poorer. For good or ill, we tie our fortunes into those of others, the more we trade with them. Equilibrium in the circular flow requires that injections equals leakages. If the sum total of injections is greater or less than leakages, then national income will grow or decline. In the case of disequilibrium, Keynesian theory recommends that governments adjust their own spending and taxation, fiscal policies, to ensure that aggregate demand equals aggregate incomes. Leakages equals injections at a level of national income consistent with full employment. The equilibrium income requires only the equation of the combined injections and leakages. It does not necessarily mean imports must equal exports, as an imbalance in international payments could be countered by an opposite imbalance in savings and investments or in government finances. An economy in equilibrium at full employment could therefore persist, for example, with a deficit in international trade and a compensating government budget surplus. In order to factor in the effect of imports and exports, the circular flow of incomes that depicts domestic consumption and national income, the leakages would include savings, taxation, and import spending. Injections would include investments, export revenues, and government spending. We have a balance of payments surplus when exports revenue exceeds expenditure on imports, while the balance of payments deficit occurs when expenditure on imports exceeds income from exports. The day-to-day money flows on visible and invisible trade are summed up in the balance of payments on current account, sometimes referred to as the current balance. Add to this the inward or outward movement of capital on the capital account and you arrive at the overall net balance or total currency flow. A country experiencing a balance of payments deficit, that is, imports exceeds exports, may adjust its interest rates to attract foreign currencies in the purchase of its bonds. This will in the short term result in an increase on the capital account investments from offshore sources, and this surplus may then offset the deficit on the current account of the balance of payments. The assumption here is that the balance of payment is interest elastic. If a country needs to raise its interest rate to balance international currency flows, it cannot at the same time use monetary policies to stimulate domestic spending and investment. You cannot use interest rates to regulate the domestic money supply when your borders to unrestricted financial markets and use interest rates to protect the balance of payments. In such a case, a country must adopt measures other than monetary ones to adjust its trading relations. If interest rates are increased to secure a capital inflow needed to balance a current account deficit, then it must repay this capital sometime. In the future, the nation concerned must somehow achieve the reverse of the situation, a current account surplus that therefore allows a capital outflow. Countries cannot increase their indebtedness forever. The country in question will therefore have to adjust to its imports, spending, and export sales such that the current account obtains balance at a higher income level, and this can be done either by direct controls or by devaluing the exchange rate. Direct controls may take the form of governments resorting to control of trade by imposing tariffs or quotas on imports and by giving tax concessions or direct payments to encourage domestic industry to export. This will improve its balance of payments. In the case of devaluation, a trade deficit means more people are buying imports and thus selling local currency to buy foreign exchange. This will not devalue the local currency as long as the central bank has enough reserves. Once the reserves are exhausted, the local currency must lower or devalue its exchange rate. When this happens, exports have a lower price when quoted in foreign currencies. Imports become more expensive. Demand for imports falls as their price rises. Conversely, export demand tends to rise.